Welcome back, everybody. It's Breaking Bet here on this Wednesday, October 23rd, gearing up for a little Week 8 NFL talk. I got my guy Eric Pauly in here with me. New decade of life for your boy. Just turned a whopping 31, if you can believe it, yesterday. EP, what's good, brother? Thank you for being here.
Of course, bro. Happy belated. Hope you had a great time. Hope you cashed some tickets this weekend. Had some fun with friends and family. I'm excited, man. We were just talking. We're almost at close to this halfway point of the season. Time freaking flies by. But it's been fun. It's been a good season. It's been an exciting season after the regression came after the no point score the first 3 weeks, and all of a sudden we're back to seeing some good football overall. So excited to keep talking and keep going and keep winning some bets.
Yeah, for last week, we were talking off air. Both of us felt we had a pretty strong week. I went up a couple. I think I was 4-2. Went up a couple of units. Pretty good deal. How about you?
Just straight one. I mean, from where I've been, I've had a couple of bad weeks in a row. So just to get back in the W column was nice to see. Had regret bet on the Jets. Obviously, I mean, hindsight's always 20/20. But for a team I talk so much shit about, I don't even care who they're playing. I shouldn't like them because I know that they're bad to the core, like organizationally and everything. But they were the kind of difference between having a very nice week and just a respectable, slightly positive week.
Yeah, I think it's really tough with the Jets. We're going to touch on them a little bit later, but I mean, I felt like a lot of people, myself included, that the Devontae Adams trade would have an immediate impact because he knows the playbook from Nathaniel Hackett from time in Green Bay. Obviously, he played with Aaron Rodgers all those years with the Packers. The offense has a lot of talent. The defense has not lived up to the hype where they were the best or one of the best units in football. They've been very middle of the road at best, I would say. That's being maybe a little bit more on the generous side. But to be honest, Eric, disappointing because even though the Jets have a lot more problems, you would still expect on Sunday night against Russell Wilson, who quite frankly I think played nowhere near as good as his box score showed up. I think George Pickens with a lot of these 50-50 balls really helped him out and made that line look good. It was a little disappointing how they couldn't stop the Steelers offense, especially after they were up 9 points. It looked like they were taking control of the game and they were on their way to having a big win and really taking it to the Steelers. And, on a dime, it completely unraveled for them.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think Devontae Adams, and I still don't think Devontae Adams means shit. I mean, this offense is, head and shoulders above what they were the last couple of years, which isn't saying much because they're so bad. But this is a functional offense. The defense getting shredded the way that they did was not on my bingo card. Of course, you did have some Mike Tomlin voodoo magic on, 2 interceptions that were, tough plays to be made that obviously, flipped the field for the Steelers. And then on the flip side of the Jets, it's not just the fact that their defense isn't good. They're also now even more injured in the secondary, which is going to be really concerning and something to monitor, not just this week, but for the next couple of weeks, because they don't get as much pressure on the rushers. They obviously can't stop the run to save their lives, and now their secondary, which was supposed to be the strength of their defense, is banged up. So the Jets are, obviously 2-5, and it's not looking like it's 2-5 like the Bengals or with hope. It's this team is looking like a crappy team. And even though I do have an easy schedule, so I guess we will see what happens. I'm not counting Aaron Rodgers out just yet because he's definitely not the problem. But when you have such deeper organizational issues, the Jets obviously have, it's going to be tough to see them really gelling as a team and making such a big progression, especially with the injuries.
Yeah. That being said, Week 8, what's your favorite look?
I don't have one.
Wow, you don't have a
I don't love the board at all this week. There's nothing that my numbers are telling me oh my God, I love. Last week, the Washington, Carolina, I mean, I'm not going to blame it on the Jaden Daniels injury on that losing because I expected Carolina to score more than 7. They would have scored more than 7. We would have cashed with no sweat. But there's nothing that I'm looking at numbers-wise that screams to me 2 or 3 unit bet for this week. There's nothing there. I do have some leans, and I do go live tomorrow where I will also be discussing NFL, so maybe I'll have a better look. But as it currently stands, there's nothing that I'm pounding the table for.
Interesting. I could see where you're going with that. I can. I don't love the board this week either, but I do have a couple plays that I am interested in talking about, and that's where we're going to start. And we're going to go right away. Are you ready for this? Are you ready for this? The Royal Mint. It is the Indianapolis Colts plus 5.5 at the Houston Texans. These two teams met in week one, and even though the Texans won, they did not play a clean game. Anthony Richardson missed several key deep balls that could have really turned this game around. And obviously, we've seen Anthony Richardson take a big step back this year, struggling a lot, even though they somehow found a way last week to pull it out against Miami. Indianapolis is in the Royal Mint spot here, Eric. And, unless that moves, I think this is a play that I'm really going to be interested in. I know there's been a couple Royal Mint spots the last 3 weeks that have not come home. And, listen, that happens. I put out the disclaimer. It is not a play that hits 100% of the time, but it is definitely in the high 60s, low 70s in terms of percentage over the last 2, 3, 5, 10 years, et cetera, et cetera. So Indianapolis here, a divisional game. I think you can agree with me. The Texans have been a disappointment. Even in a lot of their wins, they don't look convincing. The one game where you're like, okay, they looked good was against the New England Patriots in Drake May's first start. Otherwise, CJ Stroud had 84 passing yards at Green Bay last week. It's disgraceful. Against Buffalo, that's a game that they probably should have lost. Stroud has definitely taken a step back from last year. He's not having a bad season, but it's not to the MVP level that drew a lot of hype coming into 2024. I think the Colts are going to find a way to keep this one close. This could be a spot where Anthony Richardson uses his legs a lot more. The one concern I would have is what's going on with Jonathan Taylor. When is this dude coming back? But if Richardson can get the accuracy under control a little bit and hit downs, Pittman, etc., I think we have a shot here to see Indianapolis come away with a tight game.
Just for the only place it's 5.5 is FanDuel. It's 5 everywhere else, or even 4.5. So I don't know if that's going to mess with your Royal Mint look. Obviously, it's not closed, and you don't play this pre-close. But I'm only seeing a 5.5 at FanDuel currently. So
is there 5? You said there was a 5 elsewhere.
There's 5s basically everywhere else. It's just no 5.5.
Yeah, that's a Royal Mint spot.
It's not the 5.5. It's a 5 as well.
It's 5 and 5.5.
Copy.
Close. 5.5 is usually better, but 5 is still good. So just to clarify that, I know 5.5 has been a lot more of a popular number this year than 5 has been, but 5 is still in the mix. So what say you here? Do you think Indianapolis has a shot to keep this one close? I don't think they're going to win this game, but keep this one inside a field goal.
No, I think they definitely can. The thing I want to just talk more holistically about the Texans. So last year we saw CJ Stroud really kind of come on as like this amazing quarterback toward the middle and the end of the season. And the reason why I was so high on Houston, it wasn't because they signed Stephon Diggs. It wasn't, because of that. It was because at the end of last year, Bobby Slowick, their OC, after starting off last year in, a very run-heavy scheme where on first and second down they were throwing the ball not at all. They just ran into second down, ran into third down, then gave CJ Stroud, a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7 to try to make something happen. That didn't work. And then toward the end of the season, they changed their neutral pass script and increased it, and they were throwing the ball a lot more on early downs in neutral game script situations. I expected that to be the case coming into this year, which is why I like the Texans so much. I thought that Bobby Slowick recognized that you have a player, you obviously have receivers, and now you're more capable of unleashing him on early downs. But what ended up happening is they regressed back to what they were doing that didn't really work to start last year, where they're going run on first down, run on second down, CJ Stroud bail me out on third down, and that clearly is not going to work and has not worked. So that's kind of my analysis on the Texans is I was always low on D'Amico Ryans in the first place, but Bobby Slowick, I know we got a lot of love toward the end of last year for maybe OC jobs or head coaching jobs, etc. But the Texans play calling is doing CJ Stroud no favors. And again, he's not just he's like you said, he's middle of the pack quarterback as he currently sits, in terms of EPA numbers, completion percentage over expected numbers, success rate numbers. Like, he's actually in drop back success, he's toward the bottom of the NFL. But I think a lot of it has to do with some poor coaching, and I don't think at this point it's going to change. We saw a little bit of change last year, expected that to come into this year, and instead they changed, but back to what they were doing that did not work. So I think there is more to the Texans' lack of success than, CJ not being or playing as great. Their offensive line has been not as good as we would have expected, and they're just not playing a great brand of football that leads to success. And I think that's what I expected, and it just hasn't been the case. And of course, Houston has been downgraded significantly from my preseason priors, where I really thought they would cement themselves as a Super Bowl caliber team.
I think the interesting thing to note here as well is Nico Collins being out is gigantic for this offense. Nico Collins, obviously, talent aside, does so many things. He's physical. He commands so much defensive attention, and that opens everything else up for a Stephon Diggs or a Tank Dell or a Schultz, especially in the run game with Mixon. So the fact that he's not there, this offense looks less like the juggernaut that we saw last year and a lot more pedestrian, like we're talking about. And, maybe Bobby Slowick decides to change things up. I mean, their offense really didn't do a whole lot against Green Bay last week. I mean, Mixon had a pretty strong game, but otherwise, it's a team that honestly hasn't gotten what they would have expected from Tank Dell. Tank Dell's been very, very disappointing so far this year. So while they're figuring it out, I think there's an opportunity to take advantage here. And to be fair, Jonathan Taylor did practice limited today. And if he is able to make his return, Indianapolis lost that week 1 game by 2 points, and Houston was probably playing a lot better then than they are now. So I think for me, I'm going to be taking a look at the Colts at 5.5 or 5, assuming that's where it closes. So that's where I'm going to start with my favorite look for week 8.
Very nice.
Eric, let's go to the Thursday night game here. We have a Vikings-Rams game. I'm very interested in the Rams. There's been a lot of talk here with Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford potentially on the trade block, but more so Cooper Kupp. And a lot of rumors in the Twitter sphere going on with the Vikings and Kupp. Kupp finally making his return after getting hurt in week 2 against the Cardinals. Now, do you think as a 3-point dog with Kupp coming back, this is a spot to buy the Rams? Or do you like the Vikings on a short week on the road?
I make the spread Minnesota -3.5, so I do see value with 3, and there is a 2.5 at DK right now, but it's -122. But I lean toward Minnesota. It's nothing that I'm not running to the window to bet the Vikings. It's probably a game where I'm just going to look at props. One of my favorite props for Thursday night is Jordan Addison over receiving yards. It's just 41.5, which is just too low. His median this year is 51. Obviously, this Rams secondary is Swiss cheese. And I think it's a very interesting game from a matchup perspective, considering that Matthew Stafford has really struggled against pressure in his career, and the offensive line gets up a ton of pressure. It also struggles against the blitz, and Brian Flores' defensive scheme is heavily blitz-oriented. But Stafford historically has been good, but this year without Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua to kind of save him from those blitzing situations, he has not been playing very well. I think Kyren Williams, I know that the Vikings run defense is one of the best in football, but I think that Kyren Williams, he's still going to get his touch. He's still going to be able to get it going. But Jordan Addison in the prop market over receiving yards is something that I love. And I also love him to score a touchdown. And you also have, of course, Kevin O'Connell was on the Rams staff. They're both on the staff together in Washington. There is that familiarity between him and Sean McVay. So it's going to be an interesting chess match. And I think Cooper Kupp definitely helps with Stafford in the blitz, and that's when Stafford's been good, when he has Cooper and Nacua. But at the same time, obviously Cooper's going to be a little bit hobbled still. I know he hasn't had an injury designation. We hope he's fully healthy. He's obviously a stud when he's healthy. But this is a matchup where they need Kupp, and it's good that they find Kupp back. It should be a fun, tight game, but and where you would think having the 3 points in your pocket is something you'd prefer to have. And also, again, the Rams, actually, they play cover 6 at the highest rate in the NFL. And Sam Darnold has been very, very poor in efficiency metrics against that coverage. But again, I downgraded Minnesota a little bit. I upgraded the Rams a little bit. I still just make it 3.5. Gun to head, I would still take the Vikings here, but I'm not going to have a play on the side.
Yeah, I'm in agreement where I do like the Vikings here at 3. It was a tough loss, and typically it is hard to travel on a short week, but these are NFL teams, so they are able to make that adjustment. And really, Minnesota has been playing as one of the best teams in the NFL. They were in a dogfight with the Lions. It's actually funny. So, in my circa millions, out of the 5 picks I had, the Vikings -1.5 were one, and the Lions are a team I had to win the Super Bowl, and I like the Lions a lot this year. And I went with the Vikings only because they're coming off a bye. Felt like the Lions may have blown their load the week before in Dallas. They just lose Aiden Hutchinson. And every time I've bet against the Vikings this year, I've lost because I felt like a regression's coming because I don't think they're as good as what they've shown thus far. So I ended up going with the Vikings, and I got up early, and I texted Eric after the first quarter. I'm like, dude, Vikings, this is unreal. I felt like this was really good about this because we were on opposite sides of that game. And the Lions end up going up big, and the Vikings come back, and then Montgomery fumbles. That kind of turns the whole game. And then the Lions go kick the game-winning field goal. I think this is a Minnesota bounce-back spot. And if you're a good team, which right now Minnesota is showing that they're a good team, this is a game that you win on a comeback here. Just, the Rams had a tough time at home last week putting away the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, and this Rams pass defense, I mean, they've improved in some of these metrics, but overall, like, it's not a unit that scares. They're still 26th in passing EPA, 27th in explosive pass, 26th in average depth of target. So we know Kevin O'Connell is going to want to pull up the stops to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, which is why I love him as well, as I mentioned, and co. But Sam Darnold also is a guy who is going to make 1 or 2 amazing throws. He's also going to make 1 or 2 crappy throws that can very easily be turned over. So, if the luck goes in the Vikings' way and those throws aren't intercepted or the 50-50 ball is won by a Vikings receiver, I could see the Vikings, pulling away and winning this game by a touchdown. But at the same time, it's nothing strong enough for me. But if I get a 2.5, like -110, I'd definitely be fading the market because obviously it opened at 3. It's been sitting 3. But I am comfortable laying that 2.5. But once it's at that 3, there's just not enough value for me to take the Minnesota Vikings. And like I said, I'm sticking to the prop market there. Jordan Addison, love him this week.
What about Cooper Kupp? For anybody that's interested in betting him and his return, and if it is indeed that he gets traded to the Vikings and this could be his audition, how is he coming back off of his injury? Cooper Kupp right now currently sitting at 6.5 receptions and 66.5 yards. Do you explore taking the over on either of them or both?
I would prefer receptions because, like I mentioned, now that he has Stafford has that outlet on third down, he's looking for Cooper Kupp, especially against the blitz heavy scheme that the Vikings have. But the number is so high and deservingly so. Like when Cooper Kupp is healthy, we forget how good Cooper Kupp is. Obviously, he's an older receiver now and he's dealt with a ton of injuries. But if I had to choose either or, I would choose receptions.
Fair enough. Next game, we have the Arizona Cardinals, who are now a 3.5-point dog at the Miami Dolphins. This line has moved a lot for one reason. Tua Tagovailoa back at practice. The interesting part here with Tua coming off the concussion, let's say he plays, which right now it's trending like he's going to play. I feel like this is a very difficult line for me to look at because obviously when Miami's offense has Tua and everybody's clicking, it is very difficult to stop. There's not many teams that can slow down the Miami Dolphins. How does the Tua injury returning impact your decision on how you handicap this contest?
Well, obviously they would not put him on the field if they didn't think he was good enough to go. My concern with Tua would obviously be, the fact that he would have to take, if he's we can argue he could be one really big hit away from literally probably never playing again. But that's not what you get with the Arizona Cardinals. We're talking about a team that is 30th in pressure rate in getting to the quarterback. We're talking about a Miami Dolphins offense that when Tua is healthy and with Achane, Tyreek, and Waddle all healthy, is a 30-point per game on a low mark kind of offense that has the capability of putting up 40 on anybody, especially a defense as crappy as Arizona's. Also, Western Conference teams, this is from TA Analytics, playing at 1 p.m. on a short week off Monday Night Football are just 45% since 2000. And when they're an underdog, that number is even worse. They're just 42% against the spread since 2000, underdogs from the West Coast playing a 1 p.m. game on the next Sunday. But then you also have Kyler Murray, who we've talked about too many times. And again, I'll stick with the best way to put it for Kyler. He's inconsistent. He's consistently inconsistent. He has some great games. He has some games where you're like, bro, like, you don't even look like you want to be playing football right now. He's been amazing as an underdog in his career, 29-16 against the spread. And he's facing this Dolphins defense that is actually ranking very well in EPA. But it's not a defense that I think is good. I think it's still, they've played not the best schedule of opposing passers. So I don't think that it's, as good as their numbers. And I think that this is honestly, I'm not going to bet it because I'm so off market. And whenever I'm so off market, I believe that I'm wrong, not the market, especially when we're talking about a week 8 game. But my numbers show value on Arizona. I like Arizona, but it's not something, again, that I'm running to the counter to bet. But again, gun to head, I'm taking the Arizona Cardinals here. I think Miami is nowhere near as good defensively as their numbers are showing. They played the best quarterback they played being Josh Allen. He absolutely, shredded them. And even like Geno Smith, even Trevor Lawrence in week 1, like they really could have won that football game like we've talked about. So I don't think this Dolphins defensive metrics are as good as advertised. And yes, Tua is an amazing bump from Snoop Huntley and or Tim Boyle, and obviously both. But and this is, again, a dream matchup for Tua to come back to. A crappy secondary, no pressure, gets the ball out quick. You would expect a big Tyreek and HN and Waddle game. But with that being said, I think that this Dolphins defense is not as good as advertised. I think the Cardinals can have success moving the football. I would take the Cardinals plus the 3.5.
The Arizona Cardinals, Eric, I mean, I don't know how many times I've said it. I think I say it every week. Highest variance team in the NFL, in my opinion. I mean, honestly, anybody listening, stop me if you've heard this before, but when they decide to show up, they can be the best team in football. No joke. But when they decide to not show up, they look like they can barely hang with the high school team. The problem now is when you have this particular matchup here, you have to handicap it like Tua is coming back at full strength if you're going to bet Miami. You can't say, well, he's one hit away, or, maybe the timing's off. You know how big Miami's offense, especially other than any other offense, is so predicated on timing. That's what's made them so successful these last couple of years. I am operating under the assumption, if I bet this game, that Tua is going to play, and he's going to look like normal Tua in this offense. You're also forgetting about one particular point that I love. You know how much I love the Royal Mint spot, but my second favorite play is to lay a 3.5-point dog. Coincidentally, the only team I think this year that has not covered a 3.5-point favorite spot at close was the Dolphins week 1 against the Jags. Now, I'll admit it, I've been completely hit or miss on the Cardinals. 2022 season, 2023, like there is nobody in the world that knew what the Arizona Cardinals were going to do before I did. Like I knew every single game. I'm like, okay, I'm going to fade them this week, or I'm going to bet them this week. This year, it is truly hit or miss. I think for me now, in this 3.5 spot, Tua coming back, defense isn't really that great. You could say the Cardinals probably should have lost that Monday night game. A fluky fumble, an interception that the defensive lineman was running back and he got fumbled. Like that stuff is very fluky. You can't count on that from a week to week. I'm going to go with Miami here, but I won't make it official until I know for sure Tua is playing. The other thing here, Eric, is the fact that you remember that trend I brought up to you, like week 3, week 4. I wanted to follow. How do those Monday night teams do? When you play on Monday night, how do you do the following week? Not many of those teams the next week have won. And the few that have won really did not look that good. So as we're going through the first 7 weeks of the season, that's kind of been the trend here. So that's also something I'd be looking at in favor of Miami. Again, I want to wait and see exactly if Tua is playing or not. And then, if he is, I'm going with Miami. And then I'm going to start taking a look at Tyreek because there's nobody in Miami that's missed Tua Tagovailoa more than Tyreek Hill.
Well, I mean, the line is telling you that Tua is playing. So
Yeah,
I think
just to make sure no setbacks or anything like that. I mean, I would imagine yes, he is playing, but just to be more on the safe side.
gotcha.
New York Jets -7 at the New England Patriots. Eric, I'm going to take this one. I think the Patriots either win outright or they get blown out of the stadium. That being said, I'm taking the 7. Drake May's on the come up here. He's looked good for a guy who's only made a couple starts in his career. This Jets team, it's a shorter week playing on Sunday night. There's so many problems right now with this team. And yes, Devontae Adams got another week. Maybe the offense looks better. New England isn't really a team that you or me really love, but getting 7 points at home here when the Jets are kind of reeling and they're searching for answers and May's playing a lot better, I think this is a spot where they can cover. This might be one of the bigger dogs of the week that come home.
I agree. I'm personally not betting it because for 2 reasons. One, when I'm so off market, I tend to believe that I'm incorrect more than the market's incorrect. But another reason is also just like the travel back from London. The fact that Jared Mayo, their coach, called the team soft. Like, I don't think that that's a good motivational tactic. I saw Bill Belichick roasting his comments. I think that that's like, something you could say like your high school team that will maybe get them riled up. But I don't think that these NFL players are, going to be like, oh, we called this soft. We have to come back and bust one for coach. Like, they're probably like, fuck this guy. My look for this game, and this is the closest thing that I have to a bet this week, is the over. The Jets defense is horrible. New England can move the football, as we've seen. I know they didn't cover or even score against Jacksonville overseas, but I think it's also a tough spot traveling there. It's also a tough spot traveling back from New England, but I think it's a spot, where either the Patriots do win outright or they lose by 21. But either way, I think they score combined more than 41.5 points. I really like the over here.
Yeah, I like that look as well. And I think New York's offense is going to be a lot more confident than it was against Pittsburgh, especially when you consider the caliber of defense that they will be playing. So interesting game there. And honestly, don't look now, but if the Patriots win this game, kind of right on the Buffalo Bills' heels, considering Buffalo is going to be at Seattle this week. And we'll be getting to that game shortly here. Next on the slate here is Cincinnati, probably one of the best 1:00 games. Cincinnati hosting the Philadelphia Eagles, small favorite at home. This line was 2.5, and it's gotten bet down, so people are taking the Eagles with the points here. Are you on the side of Philly or Cincy?
So I am exactly on market with the 2.5 here. So I don't really see an edge either way. I have obviously downgraded the Eagles. Their offense is clearly not good, even with Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown back healthy. Like, Jalen Hurts is just not the same quarterback that he was. Saquon Barkley is obviously a tank, and he's going to probably be able to run for however many yards he wants to run this Bengals defense. But on the flip side, the Bengals are also able to get whatever they want in Philly. Now, I know there's a lot of shit talk about Nick Sirianni, and a lot of it is warranted. But with that being said, I think that the one thing he does do well is, like, he understands that handing the football off and just wasting some clock and moving the ball that way, his time management isn't horrible. So I kind of see why the money would come in on the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that we've discussed many times this season the Bengals are underrated at this point. They're a team that we've talked about backing in futures markets because they had some unfortunate luck in the beginning of the season. The holdout, T. Higgins being hurt, like their offense was not really clicking because they had to really gel. They've always been a slow starting team. I'm not betting this game. I probably look in the prop market, but I don't have a strong opinion on a side. That being said, I would not be surprised to see the Eagles win, even though their blowout win against the Giants was like very overblown. They have a great game plan for Daniel Jones, who just stinks. Like, they're not really get the same amount of pressure that they got on Joe Burrow. And I think Joe Burrow will have, no issue moving the ball. I think it's just going to come down to how often are they going to have the football, because the Eagles are definitely going to play some keep away. 27th in neutral pass rate. They're going to want to run the football on this Bengals team that's 30th in rush EPA. So I think it might be a little bit difficult to get to this total of 47.5. I think that's why it's under that key number of 48. So I would actually look toward the under gun to head Eagles, but it's not something that I think I'll be betting at all.
So what I find interesting here from my end is Cincinnati going against a Philly team that me and you both didn't think were as good. Or I think you were. We
I
said
love
it up.
going into this year.
You liked Philly, but I didn't. Now I think in terms of this game, I have Cincinnati kind of coming back and making a run here, and this is the game they need to win. I mean, Philadelphia really hasn't shown me that they're that good of a team. Congratulations, you smacked the Giants. Doesn't really impress me. Obviously, the Bengals can score. That's not an issue. It's been their defense that's bad. So that is actually one area where I might say this game could be higher scoring. I do like Cincinnati because I just think Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins are going to be able to make enough plays, score enough points. Philadelphia, they've kind of shown against the better teams that they're susceptible to allowing points. You look at week 1 in Brazil, they let up 29 to Green Bay. They let up 22 to Atlanta. They let up 33 to Tampa. Congratulations, you only allowed 16 points and 3 points to Deshaun Watson led Cleveland team and a Daniel Jones led Giants team. I mean, when they've played good or even solid offenses, they've allowed some points. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. I think Philadelphia is vulnerable to giving up, I would say 27 to Cincinnati. Same thing on the other side. You've seen the Bengals giving up a lot of points to opposing offenses. You see what Jaden Daniels did to them, what Lamar did to them. So I think that's why both of these teams can get over that 47.5. But ultimately, I feel like the Bengals at home, they're starting to find a groove here. They're going to get this one done. And in the prop market, Eric, I like A.J. Brown over that 72.5 receiving yards. You saw when they went against Terry McLaurin, they let up 100 yards. You saw what Zay Flowers did against them. So I feel like A.J. Brown, since he's come back, he's found a groove and he looks like himself again, is going to be able to get going here. I think he's a 100-yard candidate on the alt, and I think Jamar Chase is the same way here. I mean, you figure big play Slay is going to be on him at least a decent amount. But, same thing with Philly. Mike Evans had a big game against them. So I feel like the receivers are in for a big game. I think it's going to be a lot of points. I think the Bengals are going to take this one home.
Well, Slay left the game hurt last week, so it's not even a guarantee he'll play.
I thought he was trending in the right direction, but I mean, if it's not, it's even a bigger boon for Jamar Chase.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of the team they played in week 1, it's Green Bay -4.5 at Jacksonville. The Jaguars are struggling, to say the least. Green Bay, though, they fought off the Texans. It was a tough win, nail biter at the gun. I like Green Bay here. I mean, it's probably going to be a play where a lot of people are on, but I feel like the way Jacksonville's going right now, it's going to be hard for them to get to even 21 points against Green Bay unless they get some defensive help, Eric. Jordan Love, Jaden Reed, who, he's limited right now, but I think he's probably going to play. Josh Jacobs. This offense is gonna have a big day here against Jacksonville and be able to cover the spread with margin.
I like the Jags.
Wow. Okay. I like that we disagree.
I know, shocker, because I've obviously talked about the Jags many times this year, though. It's not like they're a team that I'm betting on every single week and I'm losing on them and I'm still going to the well. We are talking a lot of leans here, right? Again, I do another show on Thursday. All my action is in Parlay Science. So hit the Discord for what I actually end up playing. So I think that the last week's spot was a tough spot for Houston coming off the back-to-back road game, going then into Green Bay, which is obviously a tough place to play. I obviously have downgraded the Jaguars significantly since the beginning of the season, and I think I am just lower than Green Bay, or lower on Green Bay, I should say, than market. Still make this game 3.75 Green Bay, so you're giving me a 4.5. I see value with Jacksonville. I know that it took a crappy Patriots team that again is the second worst team in football. Make no mistake about it. They beat a crappy team. But I think that the way that the Jaguars are running the football, I think that they're going to be able to find some success. I know that this Packers defense currently, they are just had them. They're 7th in rush EPA, but I think that they're going against probably the best rush offense they're seeing. We know what Joe Mixon was still able to do last week when C.J. Stroud couldn't do anything. And Trevor Lawrence, I think Evan Ingram is such an underrated asset for that team. And I think that his ability to, his availability is massive. And I don't think that the Green Bay has enough sauce to like really guard all these different pass catching options that the Jaguars have. Now, on the flip side, this Jaguars pass defense is, horrendous. And of course, you'd expect Jordan Love to be able to find success any which way throwing the football against a 32nd rated pass defense. I think that that's not really debatable. But I think the Jaguars are going to be able to do enough on offense. I don't think that 21 points, I think that is a low number. The total is 48.5. I think Jaguars can easily eclipse 21. And I think that just numbers wise, when I'm relatively close to market here, but I see value in the Jags. And I could just be too low on Green Bay. I don't think I'm low. Like, there are some situations where I feel confident that I'm right on both teams. I'm confident that I'm right on my rating with Jacksonville. And I know I'm lower than market on Green Bay. Can I be 100% wrong? Absolutely. But I see value with the home dog here. I like Jacksonville.
Fair point. That's why they play the games. I think Jacksonville. We how many times have we done this though? How many times we're like, all right, it's the week for Jacksonville. This is the week, and they go out there and they just completely shit the bed. I think it's happened too many times. I am not a believer of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think it's extremely disappointing how bad they are, considering that they have a pretty talented roster. I'm not believing on Jacksonville. This has happened too many times. I think Green Bay is finally coming into their own. They're getting everybody back healthy. Love is starting to find a groove. He threw a couple interceptions, but I think in the fourth quarter he was completely unstoppable. The quarterback rating was like 133, something like that. He went off the charts. So I think he's going to carry that in and light up a very vulnerable Jacksonville secondary.
I see it. I definitely see it. Again, I don't think Jacksonville is like as bad as New England, Carolina, even like I'll pull up my numbers. I don't think they're as bad as the Giants, the Titans, Las Vegas. Like I don't think they're as bad as those teams. So we shall see.
We shall see. We shall see. I like that we're on opposite sides here. Let's see if we're on opposite sides on this one. Tampa Bay, 2.5-point dogs at home off a tough Monday night loss. They didn't just lose to the Ravens. They lose their guy, Mike Evans. He's out till at least week 12. And they lose Chris Godwin for the season on a meaningless last drive, down 10, 50 seconds left, no timeouts. Todd Bowles says, you know what? We're going to stat pad. Go out there. What happens? Patrick Queen, questionable hip drop tackle. Chris Godwin's done for the year. Tampa Bay looking for revenge after that Thursday night spot in Atlanta where they lost a devastating overtime one. You think they get the revenge, or is this Atlanta all the way?
Considering like the loss of Evans and Godwin, like that's so huge for this team. Like they do have relatively solid depth, but we're talking about Mike Evans, a Hall of Famer in the making, and Chris Godwin, one of the most reliable pass catchers in all of football currently. So you can't overstate how impactful those injuries are. I've downgraded Tampa Bay significantly due to those injuries, as I'm sure everyone you have to at this point, unless you don't, week to week power rate gets to injuries. I personally do. So I make it Atlanta. I make it Tampa Bay -2 prior, but I always have a little asterisk next to these games because, again, I don't know exactly how to quantify those losses on the offensive side of the ball. So it's a game I'll gladly sit on the sideline for as when my numbers are really off, I revert to the market. But when they're really off and there's key injury issues, that to me is just literally like a pretend this game isn't even on the board type of situation. But that being said, it's not like they're going against a good pass defense in Atlanta. Atlanta, like as they do this season, is they're just trying to keep everything in front of them. So that means you can move the ball on them, and they do have weapons in Bucky Irving. Like he is like a guy with the ball in his hand that's talented. Rashad White, I know, gets some hate, but like he isn't a bad player overall. I don't think Todd Bowles is smart enough as a coach to really kind of like devise this amazing game plan. But as we saw last week in Atlanta, like Atlanta is fraudulent. But I think the spread makes sense. My numbers, again, I haven't been able to adjust enough for these injuries. I don't know how to adjust enough for these injuries. So a game I'll be watching for. I'll be sitting on the sideline for, though I do like the Falcons. I do like some Falcons props on offense. I like Drake London again. Like what's not to like about Drake London at this point? And if there is ever a time for Kyle Pitts to like finally get some yards, I mean, we're talking about a 41.5-yard line, which is a little bit high for him, who's been kind of crappy. I would maybe look at him too, but I think it's going to be like a Bijan show. But again, like divisional games, all this kind of crazy stuff happens, but it also comes down to coaching with the injuries. And I don't know that Todd Bowles is a good enough coach and that Baker Mayfield is a good enough quarterback to find enough success with these injuries and really be able to make something out of nothing. It's just not a good enough duo for me. So I'm on the sideline here.
Yeah, I'll probably sit out of this one just because the injuries are always tricky. And, you got to think, why is this line only 2.5, even though Atlanta's on the road? You know what I'm saying? Like this line, it doesn't really make sense on why this line's only 2.5. You figure NFL, it's about 3 points for a home field advantage. So
no, it's not 3 points. It's nowhere near, especially Tampa. Tampa's like, I have Tampa as like a 1.25 points at home.
No, I'm saying on average in the NFL, about 3 points.
No, I say no. I think there's no way it's 3 points.
It's not. I don't think it's an opinion. It's from bookmakers that they value.
I guarantee you, if we called the bookmaker right now, they would not say it's 3 points anymore.
You don't think it's 3 points anymore? Home field advantage.
In fact, it's not 3 points anymore.
I would have to disagree with you on that one. But in any case, you have to wonder, why is Atlanta only 2.5? So something is a little strange here, considering they're going to be missing not only their top two passing options in Evans and Godwin, but the fact is they're both out, and you consider their next best guy is maybe Jalen McMillan or Sterling Shepard. That's a little odd. I would go with Atlanta here, but I don't like it enough. I mean, the Tampa defense is it's been getting cooked. I mean, their secondary, it's insane what happened just in a couple of years, since they were a team that was either in the Super Bowl winning it or making a deep run in the playoffs. It's not that long ago when their defense was one of the best in the NFL. And, here we are. So I would side with Atlanta. That's just a lean. But I do agree. I think Drake London can have another big game here, the way he did in the first contest. I just don't know who's going to stop him. I don't think they have enough horses in the quarterback room. So, Atlanta, Drake May, do with that what you will. The next game we have is a little bit bigger of a divisional spread. It's the Cleveland Browns, led by our boy, Jameis Winston, against the Baltimore Ravens, 9.5 points. Is this line too big?
I don't know. I really don't know. Another game where even with the Winston, I have it directly as Baltimore -9, so I'm exactly on market here. I don't know. Like, Jameis Winston's obviously going to give this pass catching unit a better chance of moving the ball. You're obviously going to get some bonehead turnovers as well. And I think that the Ravens, as we saw with Baker, like when they're playing gunslinging quarterbacks, like they're good enough at disguising what they do to kind of force errant throws or throws into coverages that are better for the defense rather than, advantageous for the offense. So it's, again, another game that I have no interest in. Maybe I look a little bit more like a Cedric Tillman prop because I really like his route chart recently. I think he's a guy who's trying to make a name for himself. His receiving yards 36.5, and we know this Ravens defense is susceptible to wide receivers doing well against them. So I would maybe look at Cedric Tillman over 36.5. But the Browns offense, we have to expect an improvement over DTR and obviously Deshaun Watson, who was, quite literally one of the worst, if not the worst quarterbacks currently going when he was going, now obviously injured. But I don't know if it's too much. Obviously, the divisional aspect is always something to keep in mind. But again, like a situation where there's so many games on the board and I'm exactly on market here, it's not something where I'm going to be like, oh, let me try to find a reason why I should bet the Browns or I should find a reason why I should bet the Ravens. And I'm curious to see how this market develops because obviously Winston is an upgrade. How much of an upgrade, TBD, and they're going against arguably the best team in football in Baltimore. Emphasis on arguably. But I don't know. What do you think? Because to me, it's just like I want nothing to do with this game.
So Marlon Humphrey left this game. It's a secondary that's already not good. Then the Marlon Humphrey left early. He had 2 interceptions. He got hurt with his knee on that second one. He left the game, did not return. I'm wondering if this is it. I haven't seen a report on if Humphrey's going to play or not. I would say he's probably trending towards no. And then also Nate Wiggins got hurt. So I want to see a little bit more on that. But like, so here's where I'm conflicting. I'll share it with you. I'm conflicting because divisional game, does Cleveland, not just on the field, but like energy wise, I felt like, and I'm sure you can agree with this, I felt like they were giving up, that they just didn't give a shit anymore. It was just so demoralizing having Deshaun Watson in there. And this is a team that still has some talent, even with Amari Cooper gone. I felt like they were just kind of waiting for the season to be over, getting ready to book that group on to Cabo. But now Jameis comes in, he is a gunslinger. When it looks good, it's sick. But when it looks bad, it's horrifying. But maybe now these guys start getting up and they're excited to get back on the field and play with Jameis. And obviously you have a high variance with Winston. Nick Chubb's back. You can move the ball on this Baltimore defense, and Njoku could be a big factor here, especially in the coming weeks. But then Baltimore is just, they're ripping right now. They're ripping. Derrick Henry looks unbelievable. Lamar has gone against defenses that have literally just decided to not cover his receivers. But I don't know if Cleveland's going to be like that in the secondary. I think they're going to get up a little bit here. I want to say I need a little bit more time because, like, the Ravens are really good, but are they that good? They've beaten up on a lot of bad defenses. Their defense isn't that good either, but they've taken advantage of a lot of bad defensive matchups. And I'm not saying the Browns are necessarily the defense that we've kind of had them at in the last couple of years, but I still think they're a very formidable opponent. I want to give myself a little bit more time on this one, but right now, just thinking out loud, I might be inclined to take the 9.5 with Cleveland.
And I understand why. Obviously, you'd expect some new life injected and but I do agree that the veterans on this team are definitely just not happy whatsoever. We've talked about it last week how they're probably looking to book their trips to Cabo already, and with the locker room, there are other pieces there that are potentially trade candidates, though obviously it has not happened yet. So they are going to be at what we would consider full strength. But like you said, this Browns defense is nowhere near as good as they were last year when they were, top 3 defense in football. And Lamar is just an absolute wagon right now. And with my adjustments too, I make the game Baltimore -9. It's sitting at -9. So I see nothing here that'll make me think that I'll bet on either of these football teams to cover a spread on Sunday.
I think it's interesting. I want to see if so based on an ESPN report that I read, it seems like early in the week so far, Cleveland's catching a little bit more of the sharper money after the Jameis announcement. I want to get a little bit more time later, and make a decision later in the week if this is ultimately going to be a spot where it's public or it's sharp. Is more money going to come in on the Ravens? Is this going to push this line to 10 maybe? Or is it going to go the other way? So I'm not in a rush to make a decision on this game, but I do think it is very interesting. It's going to be a fun narrative to watch. The other thing that I'm thinking about, and I might do this. What do you think about putting Cleveland in a teaser, getting them up to 15.5? Past the 2 touchdown number.
Obviously, getting the 10, the 13, and 14 are massive there. I don't hate it by any means. I know it's not a traditional teaser leg. It'd be like an outside the box kind of teaser leg. I have no really strong opinion because I think Baltimore, if Jameis Winston throws interceptions in Baltimore, or excuse me, if Jameis throws interception and Cleveland is as dead of a team morale as we kind of think that they are, I don't think that playing at home is gonna with Jameis really gonna reinvigorate them. I would think that it would, but again, not something you can quantify. So to me, I understand where you're coming from. It won't be on my card, but I do understand.
Yeah, something to think about. This is an interesting one. And so is this one. Another big spread. We have the Lions laying 10.5 at home against the Tennessee Titans. Titans on the road last week at the Bills for the first half of the game. They showed a lot of fight. First quarter, they had answers for every single Buffalo drive. But then ultimately the Bills do what they do, and they beat the bad teams, and they win convincingly. The final box score made it look like it wasn't even a contest when in reality the first half of football, Buffalo was struggling a little bit. I think the Detroit Lions are totally different, dude. 10.5. I'm going to lay this because I feel like the Lions are playing on a different level this year than they were last year. And last year they were really good. 10.5 is a big number. I'm going to lay it.
I understand why. I totally understand why. I think that the Lions, obviously, like they come off like two very difficult games. Now, like, do we even know if it's Will Levis or Mason Rudolph?
To be honest, it doesn't matter to me, but I think it's probably going to end up being Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, I don't have clarification. I do agree that if anything, Mason Rudolph is probably like 0.4 or 5 points better. I see a report 6 hours ago leaning towards starting Mason Rudolph. And we've also seen the Titans start fire selling. And I do just want to talk organizationally. I think it's smart that, they decided this offseason to go balls to the wall, acquiring players to try to see if they could maximize Will Levis on a rookie contract. 7 weeks into the season, they realized Will Levis absolutely stinks. So now they're trading away some of the guys that they brought in. I think they deserve respect and credit for that, for not like getting taken over by the sunk cost fallacy. I think that they tried to do something, recognized it didn't work, and are now pivoting. And I think that deserves some credit. On the football field, obviously, for covering a spread, that's not going to be helpful to be missing, DeAndre Hopkins, losing Ernest Jones, they traded as well. On the defensive side of the ball, they let go of, Jamal Adams, who I don't think anybody cares about at this point, but, just kind of like to see the psyche of this team, how they're trying to like make up. Like they took a swing, they missed, and now they're pivoting, which I do respect. But does that mean they're covering 10? Absolutely not. I actually make this game Detroit minus 11.25. So I do see some value on the Lions, even laying 2 scores at home. I agree with you that Mason Rudolph versus Will Levis doesn't matter. They're both crappy. And I think, the Lions team, like they're an absolute wagon. And I don't think the Tennessee Titans have the makings of a team that's going to pull off a major upset like they would in the Vrabel era. Like this was Mike Vrabel going against the Lions. I'm taking the Titans plus 10.5 all day long. But, it's not that team. I like the Lions here as well.
And if you look at the Lions, they've done well with their schedule so far. One stinker at home against Tampa in week 2. But, you have the Titans here. This is probably the easiest game they have left on their schedule. They're at Green Bay next week, and they're at Houston the week after, back-to-back tough road games. Then they're home to Jacksonville, which is probably the second easiest game they'll play. Then they're at Indianapolis. Then they're home to the Bears, home to the Packers, home to the Bills, at the Bears, at the Niners, home to the Vikings. So, Detroit doesn't have very many gimmies left. They need this one, and they can't afford to fool around. And, listen, I do want to commend them. I know I mentioned it before, but I don't think people understand how big of a deal it is when you have a Lions team going on the road against a team that has played like one of the best teams in football, who's coming off a bye, especially when you lose your star player on defense, a guy who's firmly in the Defense Player of the Year mix, especially after dropping almost a 50 bean in Dallas on prime time. They come out and they get punched in the mouth, but the resilience to follow through. And then after David Montgomery fumbled and Minnesota picked the ball up and turned it back for a late touchdown, then they come back and they kick the game-winning field goal. I don't think you understand how big of a deal that is. That is resilience. They didn't fall flat on honestly, it was a tough spot for them. So I think that speaks so much about their team DNA and the attitude of their head coach. That's the kind of thing that makes you a Super Bowl winning team. And now this is one of those things where, okay, you kind of got a gimme. This is one that you got to put away. And that's what the good teams are going to do. The Lions can beat the really good teams, which is huge. But then you can't have that trap where you lose to the bad teams. And I don't see that with this Detroit team.
I agree. I don't think they're a team that plays down to their opponents. I agree.
Next game here, Saints at the Chargers, catching 7.5. Low total at 40.5. I got to be honest, I have no play here right now. You can swing away.
Nothing. I mean, obviously Rattler against Sean Payton in that defense, and a revenge spot for Payton. If you didn't have the Broncos on that Thursday night game, I don't know if you were really paying attention to anything. It's a similar spot where I don't trust that Dennis. We've seen it with our own two eyes. We don't trust that Dennis Allen is good enough with the rookie quarterback to optimize things. Obviously, also with Shaheed and Olave still not in the mix. The Chargers defense, again, I don't think they've played anybody really, really that good offensively to be like this defense is as good as their numbers. But I've definitely upgraded LAC, who I just was down on. Not a lot, but I did upgrade them. And then the Saints, it's also tough because I don't know how much to downgrade them. I downgraded them a shit ton. I get to this game to LAC minus 5.75. But with that being said, I'm not confident in my number in New Orleans. And I think Rattler has some, talent. But I don't think Rattler is going to, instill fear into any DC. And I think that the Chargers, with their ability to kind of just run the ball. And Justin Herbert, again, I mentioned last week how that prop line was so low in Denver. He soared over it. It was so low last week. He absolutely obliterated it last week too. We're still talking about Justin Herbert, who from a pure talent perspective, regardless of lack of weapons, is a top 7 to 5 quarterback in the National Football League. You could debate with yourself if you want to. It's an absolute animal. And I think that this is the game where the Chargers can just kind of roll to a win. I want nothing to do with betting money on the Saints. I do, always say I buy by betting numbers, not teams. But the Saints are a team where I don't think I'm right on their numbers. So it's a pass for me, a hard pass for me.
Yeah, me too. I don't really like it. Interesting though. I took a look at DraftKings. When you compare DraftKings and FanDuel's lines right now, almost every one of them are different. There's only a few games that are in agreement, which I find interesting. A game they are in agreement with, Slime, is the Bills -3 at Seattle. Obviously, Seattle dominated in Atlanta last week, and then they get to come home. But there's a very good chance that they're going to be missing their star receiver, Papa DK Metcalf. Obviously, Seattle is a deep offense, but when you lose a game breaker like Metcalf, who's also a matchup nightmare, that is tough to not only quantify on the field in terms of production, but how a defense plays you. I do not believe the Bills are that good of a team. I think they can beat the bad teams. I think, they've shown right now that they're a playoff team. How good to that extent, we don't know. But the Seattle team really hasn't impressed me that much. We know their offense can score, and going into Atlanta and winning isn't really a statement for, I would say, either of us. It's a tough travel, but if DK Metcalf is definitely out, even with DK Metcalf, I think I got to go Buffalo here.
I love Seattle. It's the next best thing on my card. It's my second favorite play. I like them both the same. Neither of Seattle or the over in that Jets-Patriots game are on my card yet. I have not bet anything just yet, but this is on my radar. I think I have a good feeling of both of these teams with my ratings, and I still make this game just Buffalo -1. I agree that the DK Metcalf thing is going to be very difficult, but it's also a very tough spot for Buffalo. Traveling to Seattle, it's never an easy place to play, and especially given the travel from Western New York to the Pacific Northwest. And I think that the Seahawks team, I've definitely downgraded them from my priors, but I think that they're an upset candidate here. And I think that considering what you're saying about thinking Buffalo's overrated, I'm surprised that you are so intrigued by Buffalo. If you think they're only, if they're a team that beats the bad and loses to the good, I think Seattle is good enough to keep this game within 3 points and maybe even win outright.
Well, I think the reason why I like Buffalo bigger is because Seattle, and obviously they were missing Byron Murphy and some of the key members of their defense. They haven't been that great against the run. And then you look at last week, Bijan had a day. And I think James Cook can have a day here, and Josh Allen can take it into his own hands. And, maybe if he decides to call his number several times. The Amari Cooper addition is nice, and I think that can definitely have an impact here. But he's finding a way to get it done with Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, the two tight ends. I don't know, man. I feel like Buffalo right now, it's this weird combination, but it's working. They're able to move the ball. They're able to score points. The Seahawks defense is definitely not as good as I think we thought it would be. And, listen, it's not even halfway through the season. Maybe throughout the year, when all their guys are back and playing together long enough, it's going to start to gel over the final 5-6 weeks as they're getting ready for a playoff run. Absolutely could see it. But right now, that's not what I see. They're letting running backs go off on them. And I think James Cook is definitely going to be the celery stick that stirs the spicy Bloody Mary. And I feel like Buffalo can pull this one out. I definitely see your point on Seattle at home. But you know what, man? I got to see them really deliver against a playoff-worthy team. And you
I
can say
definitely
Atlanta is by
I
default.
definitely understand that. I think the fact that the Bills are currently 25th in pressure rate, I think that most quarterbacks are susceptible to pressure. Geno obviously being one of them, but I think that if he'll have a cleaner pocket than he is used to, I think that's going to be a big plus for his ability to move the ball. Obviously, DK is a little bit concerning, but I think Geno in the offense is going to be able to move it, and I think that's going to be enough to keep this game tight and a close football game. And again, I'm trusting my numbers here. Just for reference, I have the Bills as my second highest power rated team. Obviously, that's debatable, but if I were to downgrade them, I would show even more value on Seattle. Am I too high on Seattle? Potentially, but I have Seattle as my 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 as my 11th rated team. So I'm not even talking about having Seattle like this juggernaut where I'm still so high on them. Maybe that is too high, but maybe it's potentially also just not. And considering how high I am on Buffalo, and I still see this number at just Buffalo -1. And again, my home field advantage for Seattle is just 2 points. So, I'm not dying on that hill where I think that they deserve so much credit for being home. I just don't think they're as bad of a football team there. And I'm trusting my numbers fully here, as I did with them against Atlanta last week, which was sweat free. And I like Seattle. It's something that is going to be on my card more likely than not.
But let me ask you though, honestly, it sounds like one of the, and I completely get it because it's tough to do. One of the biggest factors of your cap is the travel.
No, my biggest factor is that my numbers make the game Seattle. I trust my numbers on both of these teams. I think I'm right on both these teams. I only make it Buffalo -1. I can't make Buffalo any better than they are because I have another second highest team. If I made Seattle, a couple of ticks worse, I'm still not getting to a full 3.
I like that we're disagreeing on this. I think it's very interesting. Chicago Bears -2.5 right now at the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels did not practice. Head coach Dan Quinn is not very optimistic he's going to play. Understandable. Obviously, we might be getting deprived of a matchup I think a lot of people wanted to see. QB1, QB2 in the draft. Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, 2 teams that are right now in the playoff mix. And it might be Marcus Mariota instead, who did take the first team reps today in practice. It's a long week, but considering who Washington has on the slate next week, it sounds like holding him out is the right way to go, Eric. That being said, do you think the Chicago Bears get it done?
Well, the Bears currently are first in passing EPA on defense, 4th in success rate, 3rd in EPA per play. You look down the metrics, they look like a very good defense. I don't think they're as elite of a defense as their numbers are showing, and I think that this Cliff Kingsbury system is fantastic. That being said, I expect a poor showing from Terry McLaurin. I would look to fade Terry McLaurin this week, with or without, and the no props are up because they don't know about Jaden's health, but with or without Jaden Daniels, I would still look to fade Terry McLaurin against the Chicago Bears. Obviously depends on the line, but if it's sitting in that same 60, low 60, high 50 range, I would look to fade McLaurin. I don't know what's going to happen with Jaden. Obviously, he's an upgrade over Mariota, though there is definitely there's some sauce to the system too, right? It would be lying to say if Jaden Daniels was playing with a crappy OC, he'd be as good. The fact that they run this amazing system, Cliff Kingsbury is currently definitely should be the favorite for assistant coach of the year. They're doing amazing things offensively. They also haven't really done so many amazing things against highly rated defenses because they haven't played any. It's not really their fault. though I do think the Bears defense is a little bit overrated based on their level of competition they faced. I'm not, again, like I used to love to fade Washington. And when I say used to, I mean literally the past like 7 years I've been gambling. If I know my team, I'm fading them if I think they're going to lose, or I'm backing them if I think they're going to win. But this year, just because of it's the first time I have happiness with this team, I want nothing to do with losing my own money betting against them. So we need to see what's happening with Jaden. I think the total is maybe a tick too low because I think Washington's offensive scheme is built to score points, and I think this Washington defense that has played really well is going to get exposed against Caleb Williams, who has played very well as well, because his defense, talent-wise, player for player, is nowhere near as good as they performed against some of these bad teams the last couple of weeks. Though they are not in the basement like they were last year. Like they definitely are still bottom third defense, but they're closer probably to 23, 24 than they are to 32, 31. I expect success from Chicago and Co. DJ Moore is always a good look. Any real number one wide receiver against Washington is worth looking at. So I would look at DJ Moore props. I'd fade Terry McLaurin. I'd lean toward the over, but a side is not making the card for me. And just to the holistic sense here, it's absolutely the right move to not play Jaden Daniels. Losing this game has no impact on the future of this organization, nor does it even necessarily have a major impact on the future of this team for making the playoffs this year. Obviously, it could come down to a tiebreaker with Chicago later in the season. You want to win at home for your fans, of course, and you want to beat NFC opponents for those tiebreakers. That being said, Washington is, and rightfully so, is focusing on the long game, and as they should. So nothing on me besides fading Terry and backing DJ Moore.
For my MVP ticket that I have, and just for pure entertainment, I would love Jaden Daniels to play, but it is the right move to sit him and let him get healthy. Obviously you can't make a true cap here and a true decision until we know who's playing quarterback for Washington. I'd say this, though, it comes down to very simple. If Jaden Daniels plays, I'd probably go with Washington. If Jaden Daniels doesn't play, I'm going with Chicago. I'd imagine once the decision is announced, how many points more, because I would say this is right now at 2.5, this is factored in, leaning that Jaden Daniels is not going to play. How many more points does this spread change if and when the Commanders rule him out? I would say it's going to be closer to a couple points. I think Chicago is definitely the better overall team talent-wise, especially when you consider how good their defense is. I think it's a Bears or pass for me right now until we hear further about the health status of Daniels. And I will say I do agree. I think DJ Moore, Rome Daddy, it could be all systems go for this offense against a defense that is absolutely terrible against these receivers. Another big spread here. Interesting. Denver Broncos home 9.5-point faves against Carolina, who will be starting Bryce Young this week. If you haven't heard, Andy Dalton and his family got into a car accident. They're okay, but it is enough to knock him out of this week's game on the road in the Mile High City. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm going to lay the number with Denver. Bryce Young is right now nothing close to an NFL quarterback. Denver's defense is very good right now. I'm not 100% sure what's going on with Patrick Surtain, but if Surtain is suiting up, it just makes it that much harder. Bo Nix, obviously, it's this weird thing that they're doing, but he's looked like he's able to run the Sean Payton offense. He's starting to come into his own, and some of these layups that he's gotten, he's playing who's on his schedule, and it's impressive. And we got to give them a lot of credit. And I think this is shaping up to be a Raiders Broncos earlier in the season kind of blowout for Denver.
If somebody told you, Johnny, before the season that the Washington Commanders would be laying 10 points in an NFL game and that the Denver Broncos would be laying 10 points in an NFL this season, no, you would not have believed them. Me neither. I didn't bet it because, again, I said I'm not fading my team for this. Honestly, as long as Jaden Daniels is my quarterback, next year will be a different story. But right now, I'm just riding the high of having a quarterback like Jaden Daniels. It's hard to fathom, but it makes sense. Like Bryce Young is god awful. like god awful. Like no need to mince words or do anything like that. Like, he is not, like you said, an NFL quarterback. He's horrific. This Denver Broncos team, they have a great coach and they play hard. And that's obviously, huge. I'm surprised. I don't know if people did expect anything less. I personally didn't. Sean Payton has been a great, amazing head coach, so I'm not shocked to see him, leading this team the way that he is leading them. But Bryce Young is awful. I had the over in that game last week, and once I saw Bryce Young preparing to warm up on that drive for the backdoor not the backdoor cover, but the push for the game total to go over, he needs to get a scoring drive going. I knew it had no shot, and what happened, 3 and out, not even a question. Barring Bo Nix is also bad. I just need to put that out there too. His EPA numbers look better because of his rushing ability, which do get added into EPA, but he's still 29th of the 38 quarterbacks who have played more than 70 snaps this year in EPA per play, and that is with the addition of the rushing stats. So Bo Nix is also just horrible, but the Broncos team system psyche light years ahead of this Panthers team that's also very injured. It's not just that they're bad and hurt. Terrible combination. And Bryce Young at this point scoring 10 points in the NFL game seems like a pipe dream, barring a Knicks pick 6, which is on the table, or like a fluky fumble 6, something like that. Bryce Young himself is not scoring more than 10 points, even in garbage time, as we noted and we saw literally last week. So I'm not laying 10 with the Broncos, but I think the number is correct. And again, Bryce Young, like, he is awful. I just need that to be stated. Like, he is really not good. And the signs of him getting good are not existent either. So, I'm not playing the side. I'm not laying 10 with the Broncos team, but I'm also not putting my money anywhere near the Carolina Panthers, especially with Bryce Young at the helm.
Yeah, it's a scary thought to lay double digits basically with this Denver Broncos team led by Bo Nix. But I got to be honest. I mean, we kind of saw it coming last week against the Saints, and the Saints are much better than the Panthers. I think we talked about this last week. We both felt the 3 was very, very light and generous, even on the road. It could be another bloodbath here. Kansas City. I mean, we got a lot of big spreads this week. They're laying 9.5 at the Raiders. Low total 41.5. Kansas City just got DeAndre Hopkins from the Titans in the fire sale. Very appealing sign for the rest of the year. The Chiefs, man, this is a big number. Is it weird for me to possibly think about playing the Raiders here, a team that has given Kansas City some fits? At least it did last year. Remember that game on Christmas Day? Or do you think Kansas City just flat out blows them away?
No, I would like the Raiders a lot. Make the game only Kansas City minus 7.5. And even if I continue to downgrade Las Vegas, which I have as my 5th worst team in football, and I have Kansas City as my 3rd best team, tied with Detroit, just again for sake of like saying how I can't really upgrade the Chiefs anymore and I can't really downgrade the Raiders any less. Even if I did do either or of those 2 things, I'm still not getting to 10 regardless. Like, unless I'm so off on these teams, which is possible, I'm not getting to 10 here. I do like the Raiders to cover. Obviously, Hopkins in the vacuum is a nice addition for the Chiefs, as he'll be able to fill some voids on 3rd down and help them keep the sticks moving. Gardner Minshew is obviously awful, but the Chiefs and Mahomes in general laying big numbers is not a profitable spot. So I don't think that the Kansas City Chiefs have enough firepower to lay it on Las Vegas on the road. I think the 10, because it is 10 at most shops, you're getting literally the 2 possessions there. I do like the Las Vegas Raiders cashing 10 points at home.
Yeah, it's one of those hold your nose spots because it's like, really, we're gonna go against Kansas City against this bad of a Raiders team. They are bad, but it's just weird. They find a way to like hang around sometimes. You never know with them. And I mean, even though Jacoby Myers looks like he's probably going to be out, it's weird because things always find a way to stay in the game with Las Vegas. So, I mean, it's something that I'm going to consider. I haven't officially decided yet, but right now I'm leaning that way of Las Vegas.
I agree.
San Francisco, Dallas. Woo-hoo. This was a spot where San Francisco clapped Dallas twice last year. It's down to 4.5. This was 5.5. It was a Royal Mint spot, and there has been some action on the Cowboys. We know the 49ers are dealing with injuries. They just lost Ayuk for the year. Debo was sick. I don't know if he's going to be ready to go for this week or not. Dallas coming off the bye. I don't think it matters, dude. I got San Francisco here. I just don't think there's any semblance of a matchup where the Cowboys can go in there, win, let alone cover. This is a bad Cowboys team. And yes, the Niners have been disappointing and far from what we've expected, but they're still the 49ers. They can still out-scheme Dallas's bad defense. The Cowboys do not have an offense that can score a legitimate enough amount of points to win or cover against a Niners defense that's still probably, in the top 12. We're used to seeing this 49ers defense in the top 3, top 5. I mean, I think it's fair to say right now, off talent, we would probably still put this in the top 12.
Yeah, so I agreed with the opening line. I had San Francisco minus 5.5, and now I do see value with the fact that's down to 4. I hate fading the market like this, but considering it's a Sunday night game, we're going to see movement up until literally kickoff. Which way it's going to go, obviously TBD. Could be some buyback on the Niners, could be some more support for the Dallas Cowboys. My first look for this game would have been on an under, and it was 47 at open. Now it's 46.5, which is good, but 47 is a key football number, so obviously getting that number would be huge. Dallas is off the bye, and we expect them to be healthier. Even if Micah Parsons doesn't play, they have a couple of cornerbacks who have been banged up and injured. Now they have that extra rest week if they're coming back. Again, against the 49ers pass-catching unit that is nowhere near what we expected it to be just due to injuries, the unfortunate reality of this football, of the sport of football. But the under would be my first look. Dallas loves to move the ball slowly. This is a bad Niners defense, and this Cowboys defense should be improved. And without the lack of weapons, we've seen Purdy, who I've been very high on and I've been very supportive of, but I'm not naive to the fact that so much of it comes down to having players like Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle. Now you have Kittle banged up, obviously Ayuk out, Deebo dealing with whatever he's dealing with, and CMC hurt. That obviously makes life a lot more difficult on Brock Purdy. And is Brock Purdy a good enough quarterback to overcome those things? Probably not. So, but with that being said, I think that the Dallas team is more of a dumpster fire than we've talked about how bad that we expect Dallas to be in preseason. This isn't new news. We're adjusting to Dallas not being that good. Nah, we've been talking about Dallas not being that good for a little bit now, and it's coming to fruition. So I agree that at this current number, I'd be fading the market now, but I do like the Niners. But if the total is able to get to 47, back to 47, which I don't think is possible, I've only seen it go down, I would actually like the under here, as Dallas should be healthier on D, and obviously the Niners are without their bevy of weapons, and we'd expect a lot of running the football on both sides, or I should say I'd expect a lot of running the football on both sides. Obviously takes clock, obviously conducive to an under.
For the people that get freaky and get weird and do what's usually known as a no-no and tease totals, would you tease this total right now? So 45.5 on FanDuel. Say you get a 46. Would you tease that up to 52 and take the under?
I would never tease anything on FanDuel because their teaser lines are not minus 120.
True. Fair.
And
134.
that wasn't the point. That was for the audience. That was for the audience, so they know. I know that wasn't your point. But no, I personally have no interest in teasing totals ever. The 6 points are not valuable enough, so I would not tease the total.
It's a good point. I don't know. I think San Francisco is obviously going to do a lot of soul searching, and kind of like Kansas City, people give up on them, people forget about them. Oh, they're not that good. This is kind of how the Chiefs were last year, where losing a couple games, they're not looking as good on paper, lose a couple injuries. Still expect San Francisco to be there at the end when it comes to playoff time. But yeah, I agreed. We both hated Dallas coming into this year. We both had them missing the playoffs. This is not a good roster. Dak Prescott is not a good enough quarterback to make up for all these deficiencies they have. I think maybe CeeDee Lamb can get going this week. I feel like, I don't know this for a fact, but I would think after how bad they both were unable to get in sync against Detroit, that they probably made it a priority on their bye week to, put to bed whatever was going on between them and, get back to working on what it is they do. And mend the fence. And, honestly, I'd probably look for Prescott to pepper Lamb like he did last year this week. So would be interested in looking at some Lamb props. The Niners are susceptible to the receivers. They can be had on a receiver one. So I would look at some CeeDee Lamb props when they come out. Monday night game. And, before we talk about this, I would like to ask, what did these two teams do last year to deserve this amount of prime time?
First, they're shoving the New York Jets down our throat. I obviously complained about that the last 2 weeks. And now you're shoving Pittsburgh. First of all, I don't think any team, not even the Bills, Niners, Chiefs, Cowboys, should ever be on back-to-back prime times. Now you're giving me the Pittsburgh Steelers on back-to-back prime times. And having to go against Danny Dimes, it's ugly. It's horrible. I mean, listen, I think they come out with the prime time schedule early. I think that there are some teams that don't have any prime time, but, they obviously want the Giants to be good, the New York market. I don't know why, they stink. And the Steelers, obviously a good fan base. Mike Tomlin, great coach. They play winning football. So, throw them a bone here and there. Maybe they just want to get it out of the way because they're trying to just, give them the game and then never have to worry about them later in the season in terms of prime time. But Johnny, your guess is as good as mine, because the fact that this is what we're subjected to on Monday and not even in a doubleheader is baffling.
I don't like anything here. I may consider doing a Pittsburgh -6.5, but I don't even know. I'm grasping at straws here. I probably would look in the prop market later in the week. This is going to be one of those maybe ugly ass Monday night games where I'm like, I'm a little bored. Let me do a little parlay with some props and do it with the game 3 of the World Series. See where we end up at the end of the night. But I can't in good faith tell anybody to play anything here.
Yeah, I haven't really looked at teasers. Teasers have killed me this year, to be honest. But I haven't. I kind of want to abandon them, though I don't, because I have had a lot of success with them in the past. But this year they've bit me in the ass, so I'm not dying to run to the teaser market. But I'm also not dying to back Russell Wilson, especially after that game last week. Like you said, Johnny, I think a lot of it was fluky. And I think that we're talking pressure rates. Russell Wilson, as we know, has been very susceptible to pressure lately. The Jets didn't do a great job pressuring him, and this Lions team, especially with Dexter Lawrence up the middle, it's a really bad offensive line. I expected the Jets. The reason why I liked the Jets last week, so I expected their defense, which generally plays down to their opponents, but not down to your opponents in the sense where they play worse against bad opponents. They do a good job of shutting down bad offenses. Didn't do that. But I think that expecting the Steelers team to just be so good, or just really again, they're nowhere near as good as their record. Looking at my numbers, I actually make it Pittsburgh -5. So I do see some value with the Giants at 6.5. If it gets to 7, I would bet on the Giants. But the fact that we have a game with a total of 36.5 as the standalone game, come on, Goodell.
And you know what the worst part is? If you want to take those Giants at 6.5, you got to lay -118, at least on FanDuel. In what world are we?
-110.
Yeah, well, that's also an important point to shop around. But if you wanted to take it on FanDuel, you got to lay 118, $1.18 for the New York Giants getting 6.5 points. It's absolutely, It's riveting stuff. It's insane. I would like to point out to you though, it's interesting. I was talking to a buddy of mine. We decided to have a little fun, a little futures parlay. So here's what we came up with. You ready for this? Did 2 of them similar. So it's $25, but it's a nice payout. Just took a shot. Why not? Cam Ward Heisman.
Okay.
Derrick Henry Opoy.
Okay.
Looks good right now. Dexter Lawrence Defensive Player of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to get into that in a second. And Josh Allen MVP. And we did the same thing. I did the same ticket, but I swapped Allen out for Goff. I feel like Goff's got actually a better shot to win MVP. Even if he gets 30 touchdowns, 4,600 yards, Lions are the 1 seed. Lose Aiden Hutchinson. I feel like that's probably a better shot because Lions right now have a clear path to the 1 seed if they keep going. But in any case, those are both really nice payouts. Now, obviously, you could debate among yourself the MVP, and it's really all irrelevant because it's not even – we haven't even started week 8 yet, so there's more than half the season to go, and a lot of shit can happen. I mean, for anybody that doesn't believe me, look at Jalen Hurts a couple of years ago. He was the runaway through 10 weeks and fell off the face of the earth and did not win. But for Dexter Lawrence, who's 9-1 on FanDuel right now, let's give it up for Sexy Dexy, bro. This guy's got 9 sacks on the year. He's got 7 tackles for loss, which is, I think, tied for 4th. He's dominating. Now, you have a guy like Chris Jones who has half the numbers Lawrence does, who's ahead of him. You have TJ Watt, who right now is way worse than what Lawrence is doing, and Will Anderson, who's been good, but not as good. So right now, among the sack leaders, Lawrence is leading the NFL. Now, typically for pass rushers, it comes down to sacks, pressures, tackles for loss. Those are the big 3. And, you sprinkle in a couple of forced fumbles or fumble recoveries, whatever. But why can't Dexter Lawrence win? I mean, you look at what the Giants have, and yes, they're a bad team, but Lawrence is a nose tackle. We haven't seen this kind of production from a sack perspective from a nose tackle since really Aaron Donald. So if he can get himself to be in the 17, 18 sack range, which he's still got more than twice the season ago, more than half the season ago, and he's top 3 in tackles for loss, he's top 4 in QB pressures, top 5, whatever. I mean, listen, Dexter Lawrence is going to have a case. The only reason TJ Watt's the favorite right now is because, he can have one game where it completely turns the market. I mean, Watt can have a 4-sack game. That's what he's capable of. Will Anderson's having a good year. Texans are going to be a playoff team. Fine, whatever. He won Defensive Rookie of the Year last year. Chris Jones, I mean, he's had a lot better years than what he's had this year, and he's one of the favorites. And there's also a thing now, and it's a rumor, and it's not necessarily true, that Lawrence could be traded. Maybe Dexter Lawrence goes to Minnesota Vikings. I've been hearing that. And even if he doesn't, I understand that we talked about this preseason. Typically, the Defensive Player of the Year winners come from playoff teams. I think we went back to it. Maybe the last person to win Defensive Player of the Year and not make the playoffs was probably like early 2010s J.J. Watt, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe there was an Aaron Donald in there in the 20. I don't know.
17 straight winners have come from a team with 9 or more wins.
Yeah. So obviously that's probably not going to be the Giants, but I'm asking the question, man. If Lawrence eclipses that, what do you think?
He's an absolute stud. Like, it's ridiculous. You hit on everything that I would have hit on to support you, because it's outrageous what he's doing from the nose tackle position. He's absolutely awesome. He's a pleasure to watch. He's dominating. The only thing to mention, and we talk about this a lot, Johnny, is he would be the exception to the rule. Can his numbers be good enough where he's worthwhile for that? 110%. That being said, the awards become so difficult because you're not betting on just pure numbers. You're betting on people's votes on things. Obviously, like we talked about with every market, especially awards and futures markets, so much can change on the blink of an eye. Like, I hate to play this card, but if he gets hurt next week, God's shot. But same with obviously any player. But he would have to be the exception to the rule. But can he put up numbers to make him worthwhile to be that exception? Absolutely. He's dominating. I would just also, just to be not like devil's advocate, but just things to note. Nick Bosa and TJ Watt both have advantageous matchups this week. And like you did point out, Johnny, these are both guys who are capable of 3-sack, forced fumble, interception, return touchdown games, because they're absolute studs as well. So I have nothing serious to debate you on, because from a pure number standpoint, Dexter Lawrence and what he's doing is ridiculous, and he deserves all the credit, and that is alive. And the only thing that's really holding him back is the fact that the Giants suck.
And, you think about it. I mean, there's definitely a possibility that the Giants could trade him. You don't know what goes on in their organization and be like, hey, listen, we might be able to get a first rounder for Dexter Lawrence. I mean, he's 26 years old. He's having an unbelievable season. I mean, honestly, if this guy has 17, 18 sacks, you're really not going to see that kind of production from a nose tackle outside of Aaron Donald.
Teams would kill for a player like that. I think
Yeah.
you'd be potentially a first round pick, like not even a question in terms of a trade. Like I would have to be more, I would think. Every team in the NFL, even the Chiefs with Chris Jones, would line up to somehow get Dexter Lawrence on their team.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, it was just a shot. It was a small parlay, and I'm like, hey, let's give it a shot here. And obviously the MVP thing. So here was my thing, right? And I'm glad I took two of them. Say we're in like week 13, week 14, and Derrick Henry's running away with the award. Check him off a little bit. Maybe you check him off. Henry at that point in the year has got like 1,700 yards and 15 touchdowns, and it's going to look like he's going to win. Cam Ward, if Miami goes 12-0 and he's pushing 40 total touchdowns, it's a tough argument, even with Ashton Genty doing what he's doing, that he's going to win the award as well. So you get down to a certain point. As long as Dexter, if we can check those two off, Cam Ward and Derrick Henry, now we're getting towards the final month of the season. And let's say Lawrence has been dominating. He's one of the favorites. And, it's coming down to like a 3-horse race for Defensive Player of the Year. Maybe TJ Watt, let's say Will Anderson, and Dexter Lawrence. And then on the MVP front, let's say it's coming down to a 4 or 5-horse race. And I have 2 of those horses. Maybe if I could wait it out a little bit more and I could get those 2 guys in Henry and Ward checked off, then maybe now there's opportunity to start looking elsewhere to take other action to create some equity. But obviously it's got to be a tight race pretty much between maybe 2, 3 guys at the most. Possibly. Considering it was a small – I mean, it's like 25. Each of them is like 25 to win about 11.5, 12K.
No, very nice. I mean, in terms of the Cam Ward thing, I can't speak on anything like that because I don't pay attention to college football at all. And that being said, I also don't have these markets in my state, so I'm not always like picking off or like looking into the futures markets as they're just not easily accessible to me. But I'll take your. I know like Cam Ward is the name, and I know that he's putting up crazy numbers, so I'll take your word for that there. And obviously, King Henry, man, what an animal, what a legend.
Oh boy. All right, I'm not giving up my teaser last week. I finally hit a teaser after a dry spell. That was the All-American teaser. That's what makes America run. The Chiefs plus points, the Bills -3. The Chiefs Bills. It was as American as it gets there last Sunday. So, it was successful not giving it out to you. So you're going to have to go on my Discord to find it. But I will leave you with this. I know we're running long, and, this is something that we have liked to do is a little anytime tutties. Any guys so far early in the week that you're looking at to get in the end zone?
We mentioned I love DJ Moore against Washington. I like him over everything. I like Jordan Addison yards and touchdown on Thursday. Those are 2 things I would look at. I like Tyreek Hill to get, like you said, nobody in Miami is happier about Tua Tagovailoa than Tyreek Hill, so I would definitely look for a Tyreek Hill touchdown. I like Evan Ingram for Jacksonville. I know that they have a very spread out offense, so it's tough to gauge him, but you're going to get him at probably plus 200 to plus 250. So I look at Evan Ingram. If we're talking some chalk, I really like Saquon, only -140 for Saquon. So not as chalky as he could possibly be. And again, another chalk guy who at this point you'd think he just scores every week. Let me check his number. But I love myself some Kenneth Walker. And I think that the Bills, it's only -123 at Caesars. That's low for a guy like Kenny Walker. I know they're not as fun as some guys that I'm throwing out there, but just guys that I genuinely think are not only in the market for 1 score, but potentially multiple scores.
I'll stick to 1 game right now. I like a lot of touchdown scorers in the Cincinnati-Philadelphia game. I think we got to go with the chalk lattes. Mr. Arthur Shelby Brown, plus 135, and Jamar Chase at even money. I think those are definitely guys that could get in the end zone multiple times. Barkley's 170 on FanDuel, which is rare. You rarely see better numbers on DraftKings when it comes to touchdown scores over FanDuel. I think DraftKings is probably one of the worst books to bet touchdown scores on, and it's gotten really bad. It was okay last year, but from last year to this year, the hold and just the complete lack of regard for their bettors is disgusting. With some of these touchdown numbers you're going to like. So that's why I typically gravitate towards FanDuel or other books. But in any case, I think Saquon Barkley is always a threat to get in. One thing that I got burned on earlier in the year, and that's why sometimes I kind of stay away from Saquon, is because when they get down to the 1 yard line and you get the tush push, it makes me want to throw my TV through the window. So I'm like, dude, really? Did all the work, and Jalen Hurts is going to do this goddamn tush push again. And then I'll say this. I don't think we have the number out there, at least on FanDuel yet, but I'm going to be looking at our guy, Mr. DJ Moore, and I think I might take a little sprinkle on Rome Daddy here. Let's go find their numbers real quick. So DJ Moore.
DJ Moore on I see DK. Do you see him on
185?
Yeah. Like
plus 185 on DJ Moore, plus 240 for Rome Daddy. I think I'm all Rome Daddy this week. This guy, Roman Dunze, is just turned into Caleb Williams' favorite target. I think plus 240 for a touchdown on a defense that's given up 10 touchdowns to receivers this year is way too big.
I agree, especially given his rapport with Williams, like you mentioned, and also his size. But that's also why I still go back to DJ Moore. The Rise for ones against Washington, if you're familiar with what he did last year to Washington on Thursday night with that triple header of that 3-tutty game. Again, this defense is improved, but it ain't that improved. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that will do it for us. Really appreciate your time. And last thing, don't forget to subscribe to the Dub Club. Use the birthday promo code, birthday month, to get 31% off when signing up for a month subscription. The link is in my bio, Twitter, @_JohnnyVTV. This offer stands till the end of the month for my 31st birthday, which was yesterday. And if you didn't wish me happy birthday, no big deal. It's fine. I'm not worried about it whatsoever. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to stop by with us. Eric, fantastic as always. Best of luck this weekend, my friend.
You too. I freaking spilled some water on my close to my laptop, so that's why you see me jerking around. But again, hope the birthday was awesome, Johnny. Again, make sure you subscribe to the Dub Club if you want all my parlays in action, straight bets, parlays, everything. Hit my Twitter bio, Parlay Science, amazing community, and we appreciate everybody who tunes in. And Johnny, if you want to talk some World Series later this week, let's do it. So let me know.
Are we game for Friday? I'm game for Friday. We gotta.
Let's see. We'll reconvene. But World Series obviously is here. Johnny and I love baseball, of course, and we should be in for a fun one.
And I will leave you with this. In my last hour as a 30-year-old, I did a real stupid, shitty thing. Erica had a nice parlay, riding, everything hit on Sunday. I needed two things to happen on Monday night. Baker, 225 passing, Derrick Henry, 70 yards rushing. It wasn't a huge payout, right? It was like $750. Nothing big, but hey, that's ammo. Nice to have, pay off a couple bills, whatever. So we're getting in Monday night, and I'm panicking. I'm like, Derrick Henry has 4 carries. What's going on? So Baker Mayfield, I wasn't worried about hitting. So it's 4 minutes left in the third quarter, and Baltimore's got it in hand. Cash out like an asshole. And then literally a minute later, Derrick Henry takes off for 80, and I'm like, dog, bro. So moral of the story is don't cash out. No cash outs for me in this next year of my life. So don't cash out. Ride it all the way. And we'll see you on Friday for a little World Series breakdown where the Dodgers will play the Yankees in LA for games 1 and 2.
Yes, sir.
Take it easy, everybody. Best of luck this weekend.
Yes, sir.